And I'd now like to hand over to Astrid and John from One Advanced. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to take control. That button seems to have disappeared. We get this slide deck up again, please. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Some really thought-provoking content earlier on today, and we hope to continue in that spirit. And hopefully at this point, I know we've already covered in some of the talks previously covered AI. Hopefully you've still got an appetite to learn more on AI. The benefit of coming last is that some of the previous speakers have done a really good job at introducing AI, so thank you. The challenge, however, is that it can be all a bit overwhelming sometimes, especially when it's a technology that dominates discussions and debates so much. It's a little surprise that AI fatigue is a thing, as we all feel the pressure to understand it, to adopt it, and to keep up with how it's evolving. But despite there being so much noise around AI, we're very excited to put some meaningful context on how you can truly transform the jobs that need to be done for the social housing sector. So my name is John Bell. I'm the account director at One Advanced, and I'm joined today by my colleague Astrid Bowser, who is the principal product manager for data and AI. So, oops, I've skipped ahead. In fact, just to explain the agenda, first of all, I'm going to start with a brief introduction of One Advanced, and then I'm going to pass over to Astrid to cover the trends and challenges around AI, take a look at what generative AI is good at, and we'll then explore some of the real-life applications specific to the critical jobs that need to be done within social housing. That is, what types of workflows could this technology disrupt and transform? And finally, we'd like to address any questions that might arise. But before I begin, we'd like to get an understanding of the experience and ambitions today's audience has around AI. We're going to launch a poll, so it would be great if you could answer 4 very quick questions. You should see them up on the screen here now. I'm just going to read through them just so that you can respond in time. So the first question: to what extent is your organization currently utilizing AI? A, extensively, B, occasionally, or C, never? I seem to be in control of this, so I'm going to move to the next one if everyone wants to cast their vote there. I'll move on to the next one. Question 2, has your organization a strategy for AI? Simply yes or no. Okay, I'm going to move on to the third question. What would you consider to be the main barrier for your organization adopting AI? I know it's a question actually that's been posed earlier on in today's webinar, but either cost, cybersecurity and GDPR concerns, or lack of knowledge and skills. So cost, cybersecurity, GDPR concerns, or lack of knowledge and skills. I'll move shortly on to the final question, which is which workflows that AI could assist you with would you be most interested in? So it's really just to help us gauge what areas, what workflows would you like to be to see the potential of AI. So that is staff and tenant experience, fraud detection and risk management, building repairs and maintenance, forecasting and resource allocation, or all of the above and more. Okay. So I will close. I'm not sure whether I closed the poll, but I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Astrid shortly and give her as much time as possible to enlighten you all on the possibilities AI can have for your sector, and most importantly, the communities that you serve, which brings me neatly to this slide. And it really is the reason that we love doing what we do, and it gives us great pride that our software is helping housing associations have such a positive impact on society. Our credibility in housing is strong and long established, and we're perfectly placed to provide our customers with guidance on how to navigate the changing technological landscape to the sector. We have over 350, I think it says 300 there, we've currently over 350 housing sector customers that use a range of our software, which collectively support over 11 million tenants. Many of our solutions have touch points with tenants, be that through the scheduling of reactive and planned repairs and maintenance, or delivering care. For example, over 1 million vulnerable tenants have their care packages managed by our care management solution. Over 95,000 users provide regular feedback to customers through our performance and talent solution, helping to link individual performance to the goals and strategic objectives of the organisation. At One Advanced, we've gone through a huge transformation ourselves over the past couple of years, and what that means for our customers is that we have now aligned ourselves to a number of key verticals, housing being one of those. We're no longer product focused, but instead focused on the sectors, and we go to the sectors with a portfolio of solutions that we offer into the social housing market. We offer a single platform that opens the door to other areas of functionality, such as core finance functionality, time and attendance, HR, payroll, risk management, etc. And this all helps to remove the challenges around integrations, and it gives our customers a single partner to work with on such critical functions. So I'm not going to dwell on this slide for too long. As I said, I'll pass over to Astrid shortly, but just to give you a sense of the wider offering that we come to the housing sector with. We have finance management system, cloud hosted, of course. We've got governance and risk, a particular interest of mine, and we'll touch on that later on. Spend management, that is managing your suppliers and your contracts. People, in other words, your performance and talent, your ability to attract and retain that talent. As I mentioned previously, the care business management for those organisations that have domiciliary care or care homes, including the likes of rostering, etc. We've got solutions there. And workforce management, dynamic resourcing of your DLO operatives, time and attendance, etc. So look, that's a very brief overview of the wider portfolio we offer to the housing sector. But this isn't, of course, why you tuned in to learn today. It's about how AI can help your organisation be smarter, faster, and better through operational efficiencies. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Astrid. Astrid, if you want to take control.
Lovely, thank you, John, and afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm controlling, so really appreciate you staying with us because we've got the graveyard shift. So and I know you will have perhaps got AI fatigue because it's being talked about absolutely everywhere. So I personally have AI fatigue because even though I learned about it 20 years ago doing my first degree in computer science, it has evolved quite rapidly, and it's just unavoidable in our sectors and our organisation and how it's going to shape our strategy moving forward. However, being in the One Advanced platform, I'm working to shape our AI offerings to help our target sectors. So as John's just kindly highlighted to yourselves, you might not realise that you might be interacting with some One Advanced software already in your environment. And we've got this innate subject matter expertise of our sectors, but also we have some real experts I have a privilege to work with that understand our target sectors, and we've shaped our AI solutions to support our sectors and the products that you consume every day. As a result, I'm also very, very aware that we just have varying levels of AI literacy amongst our customers, and I am on a mission to demystify AI and make it not seem as magic or smoke and mirrors as it can appear to be, especially in its human-like form with generative AI. So hopefully the next 10-15 minutes will really help bring to life some of the information that you've perhaps already heard or disseminated. Maybe there'll be a few of you that already understand all of this, but if it just helps one or two of you today, then it's mission accomplished. So just to start off on the evolution of AI. So it's not something that just happened a few years ago, as you're probably well aware. That was a next evolution of AI, which is generative AI. But it has evolved over the last several decades. And in fact, one of my favourite books, I can drop the link in this chat, that I have consumed multiple times, which helps to really just break down and demystify the concepts behind AI. And particularly for those of you with perhaps a mathematical or logical background, will take great interest in this book. So it's called AIQ, and it's written by two chaps called Nick Paulson and James Scott. And it is giving real life case studies of where early versions of AI, basically using predictive analytics on more and more data sets, so pieces of information to make informed predictions. That's its premise of where AI comes from. And as we move through the ages and the decades, we start to increase our capability, just like someone touched on on-premise solutions that are now considered legacy solutions, but in their day they were cutting edge. Now we move to cloud with our SaaS applications, and then we're taking it that step further with having integrated applications that talk and work with one another. So and then of course that introduction of where AI can really add further value. All of these stages are just designed to help us become more efficient, more secure, because as technology evolves, we need to really think security and privacy by design. And then of course, with the compute power underpinning what we can do with more and more data and more asks, it really is changing the way that we work and how we can leverage new technology like AI. So just we started out with our neural networks, which is really where some early signs of what we consider artificial intelligence today came about. So that took us into machine learning, and you might not realize that you're already using a form of AI, which is called machine learning. And that is, it's typically around your reporting and analytics. So if you're using a business intelligence tool like Power BI, you might be using a piece of software that's generating reports for you to make accurate calculations to help with making informed predictions and decisions. That's actually a form of machine learning and not generative AI. So you're probably already using it anyway. And then, of course, we go into deep learning as a phase, a next phase, which is being able to disseminate masses of information because of the ability to store and process lots and lots of information to then do more with it. With this blend of stages in evolution of AI, we then go into the current frontier, which is generative AI. So taking this forward. So when it comes to AI and the different stages of evolution with AI, there is a correlation with how much we can do with AI and how many efficiencies that we can drive using AI. Is in correlation to the increase in compute power and processing power, and a correlation with the decrease in cost to run. So we talk about GPUs, which is a types of chips to help with processing tasks and actions in technology. And the compute power is becoming more and more fast and can do more and more in a short space of time. And the costs are coming down as a result. So where we found, particularly a few years ago when generative AI first exploded into mainstream accessibility, It was still considered quite expensive. And as you go through the motions, unless you're trying to do a lot of actions with a lot of data, which could be quite resource intensive and therefore cost intensive, you might find that the costs are changing with the options to then adopt AI tools that suit your purposes. But it's quite interesting. We've just shown this graph to highlight the speed at which the increase in capability is evolving with the use of AI, and how many tasks can be performed as the compute power, the creativity of human beings that are finding ways to bring data points together, or integrations from data sources together, and starting to build what you've probably heard about more and more, which is agents, so pre-programmed tools that are designed to perform specific tasks incredibly well with generative AI in these steps and actions. Hopefully this is all making sense. If there are any questions, I don't mind any questions at all, so please don't be frightened to ask any, because we're all here to learn. So without going on to the technical bit too much, being in platform, we serve multiple sectors across the United Kingdom, including our housing sector, hence why we're speaking to you today. It has also given us the fortunate insight to really understand where our customers are when it comes to their personal challenges with thinking about and adopting AI, and perhaps some of these do resonate with you. There are also some overall trends, which is where that AI fatigue comes in, that we're all listening to and trying to understand ourselves, and then what that means to us from a career perspective, and what that means to us from an organisation perspective, and then all of the new considerations when we're thinking about our data protection objectives as well. I went to AI World Congress 2 weeks ago, and it was really fascinating. And perhaps for those of you that are perhaps just on the first steps or thinking about their AI strategy for their organisation, there have been, there was a report where 8 in 10 of organisations that have reacted to the market hype and adopted AI technology have then reported no significant change to their bottom line. So when we're thinking about how AI can drive, is here to drive efficiencies, there just needs to be that baseline understanding. And this is where us as human beings and experts in our field are super valuable, because we know what we're spending most of our time doing. We know where there's some pain points in finding out information, completing a repetitive task over and over, or perhaps there's a task that takes a long time to do that could be done to save yourself some time if it was done using an AI application. And I think there has been some reactiveness to, gosh, we need to stay relevant and adopt AI. And there's been significant investments, but they're not seeing a material difference. So I also think that there is another piece of the puzzle where perhaps people just don't understand, or they're starting to understand, how AI can add real value at this stage. So if we have a better baseline understanding, and we really know where we've got those pain points, with that understanding of how AI can support us as human beings to have a successful, future-proofed organisation, then this is what I think we need to kind of get to to come up with the best ideas that we can really improve our organisations. So there is also that consideration with thinking about our data privacy and our security. So using AI, and this is not to alarm or shock, because we are very much a responsible AI provider, and I have a mantra in my team that any decisions that we make on behalf of the organisations that want to consume our AI solutions, we need to make sure that we sleep at night. And we have a specialist AI lawyer who works hand in hand with myself and the development teams that work on AI, and of course our data protection office. because we are using data and we're using a new technology to process data. And it's super important that we are making the right considerations when we're using said data. So if I give you an example, just to bring this to life, we have perhaps there are a few of you in the room who have been, quite curiously proactive with the use of available generative AI tools such as ChatGPT, and they can be freely available, free account, and you can start to learn how to use an AI tool. Well, I have had someone candidly admit this to me, although I explained to them why it was probably not the best thing to do. Even today, we're on a Teams call and it's being recorded. As a result, a transcript might be created, and for those who might be multitasking, hopefully I'm not boring you and you're not multitasking, but for those who might be multitasking, think, well, I can just listen to the recording, or I can maybe use that transcript to see if there are any pertinent points for me. It is not uncommon that someone might take that transcript and think, well, I don't have time to listen to an hour's meeting, so I'm just going to feed that transcript into a publicly available AI tool and then ask it if there, what were the key actions or points that were discussed, and were there any key actions for me to take away from that meeting. That action, as innocent as it might seem, because you've just saved yourself an hour's worth of time and perhaps toing and froing to then get to the nub of the information that you need to then take those actions forward. Unfortunately, that action has fed in all of the personal names of the people that were in that meeting. It's maybe fed in some sensitive discussion points that were talked about, or perhaps could be about your commercial strategy or something like that, and it's all been fed into the public domain. This does then present a risk, and feel free to Google some lovely publicly available horror stories of this happening, and people finding that information that are then using an AI tool because that data is being used to train the large language model that's powering that AI. So that's quite a risk, and these are things that need to be considered and thought about so that they form part of your AI strategy, and also help make informed decisions when you know how to use artificial intelligence and what tools are the right tools for your AI strategy and your organization. So just going back into a little bit of theory, and I do appreciate this has been covered slightly earlier today. So we've talked about generative AI, and that is the current frontier of using artificial intelligence in organizations and in personal lives. But there are some other considerations that hopefully help with your understanding, and also help with perhaps you've heard some other buzzwords and not really quite sure what they mean. So I'm going to demystify it, and hopefully it helps piece together how AI can help you as well. So we've talked about a general AI tool that's using the new type of technology, which is generative AI. There is, however, the next stage to think about, or the next piece of the puzzle to think about to make it really effective for you as an organisation. And this is, it's called RAG. So you might hear people talking about RAG, but it's an acronym for Retrieval Augmented Generation. Parking that aside, it means finding a usable data set. So that could be a table, a database, some structured or unstructured data. So an unstructured data example is an email or a letter, and it takes that and then uses that to provide context of the world that you're in at that time, and uses it with generative AI and the large language model that's powering generative AI. So this is when it becomes really powerful, because you might want to do things quite repetitively in your job, also some a project in your job, but you really want to use the data that you are currently using without AI to make it really effective for what you're trying to do. So this is then, so this could then be, you know, running a report, but also making recommendations if there are any outliers of information, outliers in the data that you want to flag, but also use some market research. So the websites that you might use for market research would be data sources, and start to bring it all together so that you can then complete the exercise. So this is when it becomes really powerful, because you're bringing in context from your world and using the power of generative AI to then make complete the task that you need that AI for. Taking it a step forward, so hopefully the pieces of the puzzle are making sense. We then talk about agents. Agents are not robots that are going to replace human beings. They are, an agent is essentially a series of pre-programmed steps and actions that might be using your data sources in the action. It might be using just generative AI, but it has been crafted to perform a specific task, to complete a specific outcome very well. So I've given you know, an example here. It might be for a lawyer. They regularly have to provide case summaries of what they're working on, so pulling all the information of the matter that they're working on for the client, and that's quite a live exercise, and they might have a very demanding client. But if they're summarising a case and can produce a file in minutes or even seconds, rather than going to every single filing cabinet or sorry, virtual filing cabinets. If they've got a case management system, if they've got a billing system, they can just pull in all this information to produce an updated report and issue it. And that saves a lot of time when we know how expensive lawyers are. And then, of course, you might also be hearing about the term agentic AI. And in its essence, it is multiple agents working together to complete a set of outcomes for that job to be done. It does need some other elements in that agentic system, such as a short-term and long-term memory, so that it's got context when the agents are talking to one another. But this is where it can really when you get there, and I appreciate we're at very early stages, judging by the poll today. So, but it's just worth thinking about, you know, when we start having agents doing specific tasks for us very well, how could they perhaps work together and really, you know, work on things that are low risk but time consuming, and therefore autonomy would really help us as an organisation, and our lovely colleagues who are probably working over the hours trying to get what needs to be done for the week or the month. So so that's it in a nutshell. Great. Oh yes, lovely. Steph, thank you very much for the question. And in short, yes, as many data sources as is accessible. One thing that is quite good to perhaps think about is artificial intelligence and an agent are the ultimate in highlighting garbage in, garbage out. Because if they have not been, if they are accessing poor quality data sources, so they're incomplete, inaccurate, out of date, perhaps can't be accessed via an API if you want it, streamlined information, real-time information. These are aspects that if you've got poor quality or unusable data, it makes it very difficult then for the AI tool to be effective. And I know we've only got a little bit of time today, so I'll try not to talk too much. Sorry, John. But what's really key is when you're thinking about your AI strategy and thinking about those jobs that are really really laborious when you've got some incredible team that could be doing something else. This is where you have to think, okay, well, what data is needed to complete that task, and how could it be accessed? So that's something to think about. Yes, I've got a question. I think or not. I'll keep going because I'm just conscious of time. So this is just a couple of examples. Excuse the screenshot. We have created an AI solution for organisations in the UK with 2 guarantees at our just to take us back to that ethos around responsibly developing AI for UK organisations. So we have developed a tool. And it is a tool where organisations can safely use a generative AI application with guarantees of data sovereignty, which means that data will never be hosted or processed outside of the United Kingdom. And a lot of global AI providers have a global infrastructure. So that's a little bit of a concern if you've got some strong objectives around data sovereignty. Second is that we guarantee that with our large language model that we make available for One Advanced AI, we guarantee that the commercially sensitive and personal information is never used to train our AI model. And they are non-negotiables, and for trust and transparency, we think this is very important to our UK customer base, particularly when you're on those early stages of exploring how AI can help you. So super quick. We've got a few examples of generative AI in action, and hope that this then helps with stimulating some ideas, or you might feel bold at having a go yourself if you've not really interacted with an AI tool yet. So here we've got an example from our application. But this is a great showcase of generative AI in action. So being able to answer questions. It's fantastic for brainstorming, especially if you've got very busy days like I do, but you really want to think outside of the day-to-day, or think of different perspectives. I actually use it a lot for brainstorming. So that ideation is fantastic. It's also excellent for language translation. So if you find that you might have a bit of a language barrier with a colleague or a client, it's a very helpful tool to have in your pocket, just to help with that communication. And then, of course, content generation. So we do know that there are teams, maybe you've got a super small team in your organization, and you know that you need to keep getting your brand and your audience reminding themselves that you exist. So you've got to put out a lot of content. And these tools are fantastic to, at the very least, help you with that creation of content that helps you then complete certain actions that could be considered quite time consuming. I don't know how long it takes anyone to write a blog, but it does take me a little while sometimes. So, okay. This is just an example of RAG in action, so that retrieval augmented generation. So you can see just in the screenshot, I've uploaded a profit and loss report, which is in a lovely spreadsheet. And then I'm using that to then ask questions with the AI. So this again really helps if you've got a lot of data that you need to disseminate and then use. And of course, time is always of the essence in our working world. So that's quite a helpful tool. We've got some great use cases of customers that are using it to compare 2 documents. So you know what it's like to go through 2 Word documents and think, okay, what's different, particularly if you need to compare some wording or see how something reads better or not. You can use generative AI to make recommendations. Fantastic tool as well to summarize information. So if you've been given a big report, or certainly in this world, a transcript to reporting, transcript in a recording, you can disseminate that information down to pick out the key points. Proofreading's excellent, so it is very good English teacher, bizarrely, and researching. So if you want to conduct some market research or see impact and latest news, you can use this and talk to it to get that human-like interaction to get the information you need. And finally, 2 more. This is bringing it together. So this is it's just gone live for a couple of our key products in the market, where we've just embedded that experience into the software that is used day in, day out to complete jobs to be done. So this is again just bringing it to life further, because it's lovely to. Thank you very much. We can upload these documents, but it would be nice if it just knew the context of the environment that I'm working in. So it's taking that a step further and one less step to think about. And it's just being that helpful assistant should you need it to ask and think about the information that you need to complete your job. So, and then finally, we are building out those agents. So back to the subject matter experts, of those that have worked in providing software for 20, 30 years in our various sectors. We want to use that information, who have worked day in, day out with our customers and our colleagues that provide these solutions, and actually just take those really painful jobs away and turn them into agents. So we're starting with building out and then being able to just provide those agents, so you don't even need to think about conducting a competitor analysis, for example. You can just click a button with an agent, it'll go off and do its thing and produce a report for you. Or even a really common one, hopefully not many of you have to deal with it, but a complaints handling agent is has been the number one ask. And so we're just bringing through how we can help our customers actively turn around and helpfully turn around complaints that might come in, and using the power of AI to enable a process that, frankly, I don't know anyone that enjoys handling a complaint. So it'd be nice if an agent could take advantage of and do that for them. Okay. And then just lastly, I don't know if any of you have used the governance and risks product, but this has gone through a modernisation programme to make sure it's future proofed for our customers. And that is then bringing in generative AI. So where they've done a fantastic job with their expertise and the markets that they serve in being able to suggest risk statements that are really thorough, that are then helpful for anyone to read and understand what the risk is and add to that risk register. It also helpfully suggests controls to mitigate against that risk, and it all helps to support the management of the risk register and risk profile of an organisation. So it is, again, it's a job that people don't like to do. So if and sometimes the risk statement can be quite light, which then is open to interpretation. So this tool just really helps with being explicit and supportive to that expert human being who is ultimately in charge of managing the risks for an organisation. So I think that is me almost done. So yes, I've just touched on how agentic AI works, but this is really where we've got those multiple agents all working to understand what's needed. So we talk about outcomes a lot when it comes to thinking about AI. So we've still got the same outcomes that we need to do to that we have to get that job done. So then what are the steps? So what are those actions, which we then call workflows? So you probably hear about the term workflow quite a bit. In that workflow, there might be multiple agents doing different actions and tasks, working together to then execute and provide the outcome that's expected. So I have touched on that one, and I'm just conscious it's the last part of the day. And again, I can't stress this enough because I do want to sleep well at night. There are those considerations when thinking about how to apply AI. So we have one of the talks at AI World Congress was from an organisation who spawned out of startup that just deals with AI security threats that exist now because of the explosion of the use of tool. All I will say is you just have to think, what data are you using, where it's coming from, and do you have permission to use it? Just imagine that on steroids, basically. So as I'm sure your data protection officer or appointed data protection officer is well aware of. So these are real considerations which we have at the heart of all of our decision making. But it's just something that I can't stress enough. Artificial intelligence is here to stay, but we do have to think about using it responsibly and effectively, and that should guide and reinforce our decision making. So, lovely. I'm going to pass over to yourself, John, to just talk about the next use cases. That's okay.
Sure. Yeah, not a problem. Let me just take control. Okay, so yes, okay, Astrid, thank you very much. I think you've covered a lot there. There's a lot to take in. So whilst you've already covered some of the use cases, I thought it would be useful to explore just some of the real life applications which One Advanced AI can help in elevating and transforming some of those critical jobs that need to be done by housing associations. Can I just clarify before I go on? I'll probably only take a couple of minutes, but I think in this agenda we've got 10 minutes towards the end for Q&A for the entire event. Is that correct? Or someone please tell me if that's the case.
Yeah, that's just for me wrapping up at the end. But you just carry on. If you're only going to be so many minutes, John, then just carry on.
A few minutes.
We're fine.
Not a problem. Okay. So let's bring it to the next slide. And well, it would be a good time actually, perhaps, to bring up the results of the poll that we ran at the start. So it's worth pointing out at this point that this is not an exhaustive list. With One Advanced AI embedded into the platform, as Astrid has mentioned, and it's already been integrated into some of the SaaS solutions and is on the roadmap for others. Users can benefit from One Advanced Chat or AI Chat, bringing in the product context from an active user session, be that in our financial solution or risk management, as Astrid mentioned as well. It's also worth pointing out that whilst we have sector brains and understand the sectors that we serve, including housing, we're under no illusion that another accelerator to these real life applications will be you, the customer. You live and breathe these jobs to be done every day. You understand their significance. And so it's worth mentioning that we work very closely with our customers and view them very much as partners, so that we're always interested to learn how you would envisage AI helping you to achieve your strategic objectives. So what you see up on screen here is just some of the use cases that we foresee. As I mentioned earlier on, I asked that question where you envisage or what would interest you most in terms of AI's application. So you can see here that we can assist, or the technology can certainly assist with staff and tenant experience. Imagine putting all of your user guides or your policies in the organization into one space, and your colleagues can search what is the policy on annual leave, what is the policy on this and that, and just be able to surface a human sort of language response. Accessibility, ability to transform or translate forms into multiple languages. Sentiment analysis around tenant feedback, that whole process of eligibility. You can imagine that AI could significantly improve in those workflows as well. Moving on to fraud detection and risk management, which is a particular interest of mine. Detect anomalies in application data, rental patterns, etc. Risk prioritization, as Astrid alluded to earlier on. Perhaps just looking for that consistent risk statement or that consistent approach across the organization, so that everyone has a real understanding of the causes and consequences to those risks. And next step, could we further mitigate against these risks as well? So just providing you with that little bit more inspiration on how to improve that area of the business and on how you manage risk. The buildings and maintenance, looking at predictive maintenance, knowing perhaps trends in advance so that you can prevent costly breakdowns. Case prioritization and risk prediction, and of course forecasting and resource allocation as well, looking at your previous year's data and peaks and troughs, workforce optimization, staffing levels. The list is truly endless. And as I said, we'd be keen to get your thoughts as well on where you see it being transformative in some of the workflows that take up your day today. I don't know if we can bring up the results of the poll at all, but it might be worth taking a look. I don't know how that's done. Okay. So look, I think bearing in mind we've only got 5 minutes for the entire event, I think I'll probably hand back to the organisers to wrap up. But thank you very much for your time. If you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to get in touch.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Astrid. I just have a question, if you don't mind, before I wrap up. Just on the point you made, Astrid, around the AI World Congress, and you talked about, and again, tell me if I'm wrong, about people not seeing the difference on the bottom line. I'd like to understand why that was. Have they still got the same amount of people? Are they still either doing or providing the same outputs, return investment? Was there any underlying reason as to why? Because it's an interesting comment that you make.
Yeah, it was quite illuminating actually to hear it. There are forgive me, because there was 25 speakers. So what? But the key highlights that came out, and there has been this does get repeated over and over, and you're probably feeling the same. But the key reasons are reaction to the hype first. Sometimes this can be made from those perhaps not necessarily in the detail of what's going on. So really understanding the efficiencies on, I call it the front line. I'm on the front line. So what is actually happening on the ground day to day. So there's that that knee-jerk reaction, and then seeing 12 months later, oh gosh, it hasn't been as effective. Second, AI is not good without our lovely people, and I'm a champion of ensuring AI literacy, and that means improving everybody's baseline understanding of how generative AI works. And so if you're implementing solutions into an organization which you haven't thought about the change management of the people who will adopt that technology, and perhaps they've not had their own upskilling to then adopt said technology, it just sort of sits dormant. So that's a definite. This was an underlying feedback from research now that AI is becoming more and more of a beyond an experiment and into a strategic staple, and they're finding that gaps in AI literacy, in particularly in certain industries, are just you need to improve that baseline literacy. So there are two key reasons, and the third one is the quality of the data, which I've touched on. So they've brought in, I call AI like the gift wrap over the data, and if the data is not in good accessible or usable format, it means that the AI that's been adopted is not as effective as it could be. So yes.
Okay.
Maybe I'll share, because we've got to wrap up. In our organisation, so we're made up of multiple acquisitions over 30 odd years. You can imagine what acquiring many data sources everywhere, and it's taken us 10 months of centralising and cleaning up our data to efficiently overlay AI into our own operations.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks very much. No, thanks for that.
Sorry.
It's good to understand. I'm going to move on if that's okay. So thank you very much, John, and thanks, Astrid. And I think thanks to all our speakers today. These sessions have been very informative and insightful. Thank you for that. Just a recap from me then, I guess. AI is the future. If it isn't now, then we can't deny it. We need to work with it. There's no doubt in that. There's obviously lots of innovations and ideas in place to support operative efficiency, and I'll go through some of those if I can. So just to recap from Dave Carr's session, I really like the point about AI and less physical repairs. I think we've got to start using the technology that's there. We can't bring or invent people to replace tradespeople, so we're going to have to start using technology in terms of going forward. And who knows, gamification, new word of the day for me. So every day is a school day. So yeah, hopefully we'll take that away with us into our organisations and think about that moving forward. Although it did remind me of an organisation we did employ who came from the gaming world to create digital twins, on building safety around 2018. They used a similar technology in terms of developing the digital twin, which is really interesting, but nonetheless. And then from Helen around materials, about juice and walking in our shoes, the amount of, I guess, solutions they're putting in place is great. And I think, you know, just responding to the needs of providers and having that flexibility, I think is good to see as well. Great session from Richard and Tony, always around, particularly around employment and agency. You know, AI is here, it's an opportunity, but I think one of the things I did say is buyer beware. And I think that's an interesting point as well. So we just need to build on that and be careful around it. Again, Matt and Claire, Procurement Act, it does need understanding properly. From what Claire was saying, it sounds complicated moving from one to the new Procurement Act, but nonetheless, we need to be aware of that, and we do need to get a better understanding. And interesting what Matt said as well, and I think this has probably bothered me for a while, is, you know, if you keep doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome, then again, it's the clear sign of insanity. So specifications and requirements not changing, they need to become relevant. I think I probably need to play into the current challenges, which is, I think we're all taxed with at this moment in time. And it's not the first time that Matt and his colleagues have said to us at Direct Works about thinking about what is it you actually want to procure and how do you want to procure it. And Nick, again, really enjoyed that session. Love the point around holistic approach to delivery, repairs and maintenance and optimizing the workload. There's a really different way of looking at it. I thought that was great. And again, some real benefit there about freeing up the capacity to manage the increase in demand, no increase in headcount and budget. I think that's a real game changer for me. So I love that real-time optimization. And again, I love the point about complaints as well. You're absolutely right. If anything is going to drive complaint numbers, it's definitely repairs. That's for sure. I think they're probably the biggest area that picks up complaints. And then yourself, Astrid and John, great session again. I love that about the AI fatigue. I'm sure people are going to get that more and more. I'm sure we're going to hear more and more about that. It'll be less about work-life balance, a bit like that bloody AI again, won't it? It's you know, I'm knackered, going to bed. And the AI literacy, I think it's a real valid point, actually. And something that resonates with me is particularly around net zero and that kind of approach, because there was a real literacy piece around there, people's understanding what does it mean. We've seen that play out, particularly, I think, with air source heat pumps in particular, people not really understanding. And I think the same would be, I think you made that point just now, Astrid, to be fair, about your response about the bottom line thing, really, is about improving that literacy. And hopefully this session today for everyone that's been a part of it has got an understanding around that literacy piece as well, because that was the other point about getting people to talk about it. It might feel like it's overload on AI, but I think it's important to understand the different facets. I guess how it's going to help or it's going to hinder, I guess, to some degree. I love the thing around accelerating and disrupting faster. I love disruption. I really like that. I think you're absolutely right. And I think this will need a different mindset and around use of AI. You know, I always say around, we've got new technology, we tend to use old ideas in terms of driving technology. We do need to think that up. So I think there's a real great point there about the reality bit on that. And adding value in the bottom line, that is absolutely critical given where we are. So great points, and thank you for that. Thanks for those of you that attended. Again, thanks to all the presenters who are all affiliates of Direct Works Group. Again, very informative and insightful. My sincere thanks to you all for giving up your time and delivering some fantastic sessions, some real thought there that's gone into to the audience. And again, very insightful. As you can see, I've taken a fair bit away from that, and I'm sure members will as well. So thank you all for that. And thank you for joining the day. Made it a brilliant day. Thank you.